There is not worse advice than do what makes you happy. Because happiness is an outcome, and outcomes are a terrible place to start. The relationship between happiness and purpose is one of causation, rather than correlation. Purpose creates happiness, but happiness doesn't necessarily create purpose. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They're trying to find happiness first and hoping purpose will emerge later, when in reality, purpose often emerges from movement. Not movement towards a goal, just movement. Because goals are destinations, and destinations are temporary. Nobody arrives somewhere and stays there forever, which is interesting because trees work the same way. A tree doesn't wake up one day and decide to become a tree, it simply grows. And in growing, it eventually becomes what it already was. People spend so much time trying to figure out who they are that they forget what they are. Which is ironic because becoming really is just a form of growth. The same thing is true of certainty. Many people spend their entire lives pursuing certainty, but certainty is itself fundamentally uncertain, because what you think you know is what's true, but what you know is always changing. As such, the more you look for answers, the more you find that you only end up with better questions. And that's why confidence is so misunderstood. People think confidence comes from being right. It doesn't. Confidence comes from surviving being wrong, repeatedly. Because every time you're wrong, one possibility disappears, and every possibility that disappears brings you closer to certainty, which means failure is actually a form of navigation. And if that sounds strange, think about a GPS. A GPS doesn't find the correct route, it eliminates the incorrect ones, which is why failure isn't the opposite of success, it's a form of navigation. Which all leads back to information. Most people think information is the presence of answers, but information is actually the possibility of question. If I already knew everything, information would have no value. Which means information derives its value from ignorance. And if information derives its value from ignorance, then that means that there's value in ignorance. This is where most people get confused, because they think that the absence of knowledge is ignorance, but it's actually the inventory from which knowledge is produced. This makes every expert fundamentally dependent on ignorance. Without ignorance, expertise cannot exist. And if expertise depends on ignorance, then the most knowledgeable person in the room is also the person most dependent on not knowing things. Which, if you think about it, the recognition of their own ignorance is really what leads to wisdom. To summarize everything I've been saying, happiness comes from certainty in your purpose and congruence with your action, and that lets your inner authenticity shine out and affect the world around you so that you can grow into the tree you want to be. Thank you. Cannot believe I delivered that with a straight face.